After my supervisor rolled his eyes and said, "You're paid to work, not to rest," when I took my leg brace off for a 5-minute break. I followed his exact schedule rules and logged every step I took on a company timesheet. By Friday, I had charged him 13.6 hours in unpaid Stairwell transit alone. I work in the operations department of a commercial real estate management company based in Newark, New Jersey. It's not glamorous, but it's a stable job, and I mostly handle internal service tickets, building access requests, and maintenance reporting across 4 large high-rises in downtown. My job keeps me moving a lot between buildings. Some days I'm climbing 10 flights of stairs just because one elevator is out. That's normally fine. About 5 months ago, I tore my ACL in a dumb accident, helping my brother move a sleeper sofa down a narrow flight of stairs. I was on medical leave for about 6 weeks, then came back with a soft leg brace and a partial duty note from my doctor. The note was clear: no standing for more than 30 minutes at a time, rest every hour, use elevator whenever possible, no heavy lifting, absolutely no stairs unless necessary. That went fine at first. Most of the people on my team were understanding, especially our building engineers. They even brought me a chair to use while waiting between floor checks. But the problem started with my new supervisor, Brad Carver. Brad transferred in from a Dallas branch and brought a hotshot bootstraps, I eat pressure for breakfast attitude with him. The guy was barely 35 and acted like he was a drill sergeant for a SWAT team rather than a mid-level facilities coordinator. On my second day back, I was sitting on a concrete ledge in the stairwell outside the 6th floor, just catching my breath. I had just gone up and down the same stairwell twice because an old access panel kept shorting and one of the contractors was lost. My leg was shaking, so I sat down, unstrapped the brace for a minute, and was quietly massaging the knee through my jeans. That's when Brad walked by with his stupid tablet. He stopped, narrowed his eyes, and said, "Break time?" I said, "I just need 5 minutes. My knee's locking up." He snorted, "You're paid to work, not to rest." I blinked. "You're joking, right?" He said nothing, just rolled his eyes, typed something on his tablet, and walked away. That was the first time I got written up under his new efficiency tracking policy. That night, I went home so angry I couldn't sleep. I was icing my knee and just stewing in that comment. You're paid to work, not to rest. It wasn't just rude, it was inhuman. And it wasn't just me. He was doing this to everyone. He timed the janitorial staff and logged it if they took longer than 5 minutes per floor. He made the engineers sign in and out of the mechanical rooms and deducted time from their pay if they weren't productive. People were scared. Morale was in the toilet. So I decided if Brad wanted to play games with time, I'd follow his rules exactly. I pulled out my phone and reread the internal policy he had circulated to everyone. All time spent performing work-related duties must be clearly documented. If an employee must walk between work sites, floors, or between buildings for their duties, they must log that time in the time transit sheet for proper allocation to client billing. That was the key. So the next day, I created a personal spreadsheet labeled transit time per assignment, and I logged everything. And I mean everything. 8:01 a.m., 8:11 a.m. Walk from lobby to 8th floor via stairs, elevator down, 8:13 a.m., 8:19 a.m. Wait for elevator was broken. Walk to 6th via stairs, 8:20 a.m., 8:24 a.m. Return to 4th floor with access badge, 8:26 a.m., 8:34 a.m. Walk to building C to escort vendor, and so on. By the end of Monday, I had 2.7 hours logged in transit time alone. By Tuesday, I was up to 5.4 hours, all documented. All time I previously never tracked because I wasn't a petty lunatic. I even emailed Brad at the end of each day with the subject line, Daily Transit Time Report. Per Supervisor Efficiency Protocol by Friday, I had logged 13.6 total hours of transit. That was nearly 2 full workdays of just walking between tasks and following his orders. At our Friday 2 p.m. check-in, Brad looked irritated. He said, "I've been getting your logs." I nodded. "Per your protocol." He replied, "Why are you wasting this much time walking?" I replied, "I'm following your direct orders. I document all movement per building code protocols and your written policy." He said no rest time was permitted, so I'm counting my movement time. Brad's face turned red. "You're manipulating the system." I said, "No, I'm complying. 100%. Want me to stop?" He said nothing, just stared at me, jaw tight. He didn't even know what to say. That weekend, I forwarded everything to HR along with a PDF titled Pattern of Retaliation Against Injured Employee in Violation of ADA Guidelines. Supervisor Brad Carver. Inside was, my doctor's note, Brad's, you're paid to work, not to rest. Quote, the time tracking logs a copy of our employee handbook and email logs from coworkers willing to testify about similar harassment. HR set up a meeting with me on Tuesday morning. They had 2 people from corporate compliance on the Zoom call. I laid everything out. I stayed calm. Just the facts. By Thursday, Brad was on administrative leave. But I wasn't done yet. I thought Brad being put on administrative leave would be the end of it. It wasn't. That was just the opening round. By the following Monday, nobody knew where Brad went. His office was locked. His name was removed from our internal portal. But the gossip started immediately. Someone from payroll told me Brad had filed a complaint against me, claimed I was weaponizing compliance and creating a hostile work environment through false documentation. I couldn't believe it. The guy had written me up for sitting for 5 minutes. But now I was the problem? The day after I heard that, I got called back into HR. This time they weren't smiling. The HR rep, Deborah, said, there's been a complaint about misuse of company systems. Brad alleges you inflated your transit logs intentionally to disrupt workflow and trigger false billing to our clients. I didn't yell. I didn't panic. I just slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were timestamped screenshots from our building's security footage, showing me entering and exiting the stairwells, badge logs from building entrances, and elevator outage reports. I said, I anticipated this. Everything I logged is backed up by building systems. Deborah looked at the folder, flipped through 3 pages, and leaned back. You really covered yourself. I nodded. I knew Brad would try something like this. That meeting ended with them saying they'd look into the timeline more carefully. But I walked out feeling cold. If they were entertaining his complaint even after everything I showed them, then maybe Brad wasn't just another manager. Maybe he had friends upstairs. So I started digging. One of the janitors, Miguel, tipped me off. He said he overheard a conversation between 2 assistant property managers outside Brad's old office. Apparently, Brad had been fast-tracked for a regional director promotion, and my complaint had frozen that track cold. So of course, he was fighting back. But here's where it got worse. 2 days later, Miguel got laid off. Just like that. No severance. Nothing. The guy's been here longer than me. Everyone knew he wasn't just let go, he was silenced. I knew then I had to take it further. I called my brother, who works as an investigator for a firm in Trenton, told him what happened, and he suggested I file a whistleblower retaliation report with the New Jersey Department of Labor. Said it wouldn't just protect me, it could expose deeper issues. I filed it that Friday. The form was long, and I had to submit over 40 pages of documentation. But by now, I was past the point of fear. Brad tried to screw me, tried to discredit me. And now he was getting others caught in the fallout. That wasn't just workplace drama anymore, it was a pattern. 2 weeks later, things started to unravel in a big way. On a Monday morning, our director, Elise Tanaka, sent out a company-wide email. The subject line said, Internal audit announcement. All staff cooperation required, she wrote. Effective immediately, our internal audit team will begin reviewing time tracking, supervisor communications, and personnel transitions within our operations division. If you have any relevant information, please schedule a confidential session with the audit team. They were investigating everything. Not just me, not just Brad, everyone. The whole floor turned tense. People walked quieter. Office doors were shut. Some of the junior staff stopped making eye contact. And 2 days later, the assistant property manager who was close to Brad, Greg Townsend, resigned without notice. My phone lit up with messages that morning. Greg just left his badge on Elise's desk. He took his coffee mug, but left his laptop. HR just locked him out of his Outlook. It was like watching a slow implosion. Then it happened again the next week. Another manager gone. Then someone from finance. Each one had some connection to Brad. Each one quietly exited. Meanwhile, I was called in by the audit team again. But this time it was less about me and more about who else Brad influenced. They asked, did Brad ever ask you to ignore a safety report? Were you told not to document elevator outages? Did anyone ever suggest you skip injury logs to avoid building violations? They weren't investigating me. They were building case. And then, One Thursday night, I got a text from an unknown number. Watch your back. You think you won? This isn't over. No name, no emoji, nothing else. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes. Could have been Brad. Could have been one of his buddies, still inside. But it didn't matter. I took a screenshot, sent it to the internal audit team, then forwarded it to the state investigator assigned to my retaliation claim. The response from the state came the next day. Thank you for the submission. We have officially opened a formal investigation into workplace retaliation and ADA noncompliance. You are protected under whistleblower statutes, and any further retaliation will result in legal action against the employer. I framed that email, literally printed it and hung it above my desk, just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. I wasn't wrong. I was just the first one to stand up. But I wasn't the last. Within a month, 4 other employees filed separate complaints. Some had been written up for injuries. Others were told to cover for problems Brad created. Missing fire inspection logs, fake reports, even falsified time entries to make his team look more efficient. This wasn't about me anymore. Brad had built an empire on fear, and now it was crumbling. 3 weeks after the audit team ramped up, things took an even darker turn. I came in on a Tuesday morning to find my work laptop wiped. All my files gone. My personal spreadsheets, my copies of Brad's emails, the Stairwell time logs, all deleted. I panicked. I went straight to IT. The guy at the help desk, Raymond, looked surprised. No ticket on file, he said. That's odd. Your device was reset remotely. Only upper-level admin can do that. I asked, can you recover the data? He hesitated. Not without authorization from Elise or someone from executive. I walked out shaking. I hadn't backed up those files anywhere else. I didn't want to use personal storage because I knew how careful I had to be with company data. But now it was all gone. At the same time, Brad's circle was shrinking. That night, I got a call from my old coworker, Trina, who had left 6 months earlier because of Brad. She had been one of the first people he tried to push out, claimed her PTO requests were excessive, even though she had documentation. She said, check your name in the old shift scheduling app. If you're in the old backups, it proves you were being scheduled for building walkthroughs on stair-only floors while you were injured. I hadn't thought of that. I pulled up the archived login info from my phone. Thank God I saved that password and accessed the logs. Sure enough, for 9 days straight, Brad had assigned me to cover buildings A and C, both with partial elevator outages. After my injury note had been submitted, I exported everything, screenshots, dates, time entries, his initials next to each assignment. That became my new file. But it also made something else clear. Brad didn't just ignore my injury. He used it against me, put me on stairs intentionally, likely hoping I'd quit or make it worse so he could get rid of me. That wasn't just workplace bullying anymore. That was reckless endangerment. I handed that file over to the internal auditors and also sent a copy to the state labor investigator. They said it strengthened the whistleblower case and could now include an ADA violation with malicious intent. That's when things got weird. The very next week, I was suddenly transferred to a new department without any notice. I came into work Monday morning, and my login wouldn't let me access the maintenance portal. My desk was moved to the far side of the 12th floor, next to the storage closet. No coworkers, no responsibilities, no calendar invites. When I asked Elise what was going on, she said, this is a temporary transition while we complete the audit. Your role isn't at risk. But I knew what it was. They were isolating me, making me invisible. Classic tactic. That night, I updated the labor board with everything. Desk reassignment, system restrictions, all of it. Then another surprise. One of Brad's old buddies, Greg Townsend, the guy who'd resigned weeks ago? Yeah. Turns out he didn't resign. He was terminated. The internal audit team found that Greg had signed off on false safety inspections on Brad's behalf. The buildings were supposed to have monthly sprinkler checks. Instead, Brad had logged fake inspections during weekends when the offices were empty. All rubber, stamped by Greg. This discovery changed everything. Now, we weren't just talking about employee harassment or timesheet abuse. This was building safety fraud. The audit team handed everything to corporate legal and the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. An inspector came in the following week, did a full walkthrough of every high-rise we managed and found multiple violations, including 2 expired fire panels, 1 faulty smoke damper, and a closed-off stairwell that didn't meet code. The company was slapped with a $175,000 fine. Suddenly, corporate wasn't so quiet anymore. That same week, Elise was pulled into a full-day meeting with 2 people from corporate HQ. Then she didn't come back for 3 days. The rumor was she had approved Brad's fast-track promotions and let him bypass safety sign-offs in exchange for inflated team performance numbers, something that made her look good on quarterly reports. Now, she was part of the fallout. And then, Brad came back, not in person, but through a lawyer. I was forwarded a letter by our legal department. Brad had filed a defamation and wrongful interference suit against the company. He was demanding reinstatement, back pay, and damages for character harm. But here's where it backfired. The legal team reviewed his claim and countersued. They used my documentation and the state's investigation report to formally charge him with falsifying safety records, retaliating against a disabled employee, intentionally assigning medically restricted staff to unsafe tasks, coordinating internal fraud via manipulated time logs. The state added criminal charges, 2 of them felonies. I didn't smile when I read the charges, but I felt something shift. Not relief, not victory, just this heavy breath in my chest like I'd been holding it for months without noticing. I wasn't the only one either. That week, Miguel, the janitor who got let go without cause, he got a call from corporate. Full reinstatement, full back pay, and a written apology. Same with Trina. And Josh, one of the engineers who had been written up under Brad's efficiency tracking scheme, he got promoted and is now overseeing mechanical operations for 2 buildings. But even then I wasn't done. Not yet. Because when I checked my name in the state's labor board case file, I wasn't listed as just a witness. I was listed as primary complainant in Whistleblower Action 05 NJ88123. And that title carried weight. The company thought they could shove me into a corner and wait for it to blow over. They didn't realize I'd kept one final document hidden from everyone. A voice recording. Brad saying to another supervisor, if he doesn't like stairs, maybe he shouldn't come back until he grows a pair. I had saved it for the end, and I was about to hand it over. I sat on that voice recording for months. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to feel like I still had some control, just in case everything else fell apart. It was only 11 seconds long, picked up by accident during a pocket recording when I was using my phone as a flashlight in a power outage on the 4th floor. But you could hear Brad clearly. If he doesn't like stairs, maybe he shouldn't come back until he grows a pair. The tone, the timing, the cold laugh at the end. It was enough to crush the entire HR defense he tried to build. So when the company's lawyers contacted me again and asked if I had anything else related to Brad's treatment of me, I finally said yes. I handed it over with no commentary. Just a USB drive in a manila envelope. No fanfare. And that, as it turned out, was the final nail. Within 2 weeks, Brad was formally terminated with cause. His lawsuit dropped. His lawyers stopped responding. His LinkedIn disappeared. So did all of his social media. Then I got a call from his wife. At first, I didn't know who it was. She introduced herself, Marissa Carver. Her voice was soft, tired, and heavy. She told me she found my number from old call logs Brad had backed up to their shared Google Drive. She said, I just wanted you to know I didn't know about any of it. Turns out, Brad had lied to her too. Told her I was some disgruntled contractor trying to ruin his career. Told her he was being targeted because he was too good at his job. Said he was protecting the company from lazy workers. Then the charges came out. Then the recording went public. Yes, public. The legal department tried to keep it quiet, but someone from HR leaked the audio. It ended up on a local watchdog Facebook page for commercial tenants in Newark. I saw the post one night at 2 a.m. It had over 2,000 shares and hundreds of comments. Tenants were outraged. Contractors came forward with similar stories. Even a fire marshal commented that he had once flagged the same stairwell issue, but never received a response from the building's management. The damage spread like wildfire. By mid-month, 3 of the commercial tenants sent termination notices to our leasing office. They pulled out of their contracts early and cited mishandling of employee safety and mismanagement of fire codes. And Marissa? She told me she'd filed for divorce. Brad had been under investigation for months and hadn't said a word. Lied to her, drained their savings on legal fees, and destroyed his own career and hers. She was a teacher, a respected one too. But once the scandal spread online, even her school board got nervous. Parents Googled my name, she said. They're asking for me to be transferred. I didn't know what to say. I felt bad. Not for Brad, but for her. For the kid, she said they had. An 11-year-old daughter named Sophie. She said Sophie asked, "Why is Daddy yelling on the internet?" That stuck with me for days. The man who mocked my limp and told me I wasn't paid to rest now had no job, no wife, no home. Marissa said she made a move into a motel and blocked his number. He begged her not to divorce him. Promised he could fix it. But she told him something I'll never forget. You were warned. You kept going. And you didn't just break rules, you broke people. A month after the dust started to settle, I was invited to a company-wide town hall. The entire executive team was there, including someone flown in from headquarters in Chicago. Elise was gone. Her resignation had come quietly, tucked inside a vague email about leadership transition and restructuring. At the meeting, they made it official. A new third-party firm would manage all safety audits. Every employee would be trained on ADA compliance and retaliation law. The whistleblower retaliation lawsuit had been settled in my favor. They didn't say my name. But everyone knew. Later that day, Deborah from HR asked to speak with me in private. She offered a formal apology, said she should have looked into my case more seriously from the start, said she regretted taking Brad's side at first, and admitted that she, too, had feared rocking the boat. I believed her. She looked shaken. Then she handed me a letter. Promotion to Facilities Compliance Officer for the entire Newark portfolio. It came with a raise, a new office, and a department of my own. I accepted, but not for the title, and not for revenge. For every guy like Miguel, every woman like Trina, every person who sat in a stairwell and told themselves, just 5 more minutes, just make it through the day. I decided I'd be the one to speak up next time. Now here's the final part. Last week I was walking through Building C, the same one where Brad first rolled his eyes at me all those months ago. A new employee was struggling with a cartload of supplies. She had a walking boot on. I saw her hesitate at the stairwell, then look around nervously, clearly not wanting to get in trouble for not using the stairs. I walked up to her and said, "Take the elevator. If anyone gives you trouble, send them to me." She smiled in relief. That's when it hit me. This whole thing started with one man's need to belittle someone for being injured. And it ended with a chain of accountability that brought real change. Brad lost everything, not because I destroyed him, but because he couldn't stop himself. He tried to break people to make himself look stronger. And in the end, he was the weakest one of all.